A sensation? Russia's disgrace at sea, a submarine, that's it. Putin's pride is now scrap metal. NATO has made an emergency statement. This finished off Russia's fleet. Putin shouted out when he heard. It all kicked off in the Baltic Sea. More on all this coming up. Watch until the end. Hello, this is Ukraine Today. Renata Aslanova and the latest events. The Russian submarine Novorossiysk suffered a serious technical malfunction in the western part of the Mediterranean Sea and is now making its way to a repair base in Russia. To reach the Baltic Sea, the submarine will have to cover about 6,000 kilometers, surfacing and agreeing to be towed by NATO ships. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. But synth analysts explain that previously, Russia kept submarines at the Syrian port of Tartus and a special repair vessel, effectively violating international restrictions on the presence of submarines in this region. Moscow covered this up as technical maintenance, but after the start of the full-scale invasion of Ukraine, the situation changed dramatically. First, Turkey closed the Bosphorus and Cypriot ports to Russian ships. Then, a Ukrainian naval drone drove away a supply ship in the Black Sea that was heading to the Mediterranean. As a result, the Russian submarines based in Tartus were left without proper maintenance. Now, in order to carry out repairs or deliver spare parts, the Russians have to travel more than 4,000 kilometers one way. According to analysts, the situation with Novorossiysk clearly shows that Moscow is effectively losing control over the Mediterranean Sea.
Kilo-class submarines are showing their limitations, and Russia has lost any sense of permanence in the Mediterranean. This isn't just a story about one unfortunate submarine, it's a growing gap in capabilities and resources.
Western publications, citing Russian media, have reported details of the malfunction. According to their information, there was a fuel leak into the hull of the submarine right out at sea. The damage is so severe that it cannot be fixed on the spot. Only specialists at a Russian shipyard will be able to repair the Novorossiysk, and that's where the vessel is currently headed. Meanwhile, on October 15th, the Swedish armed forces detected and began pursuing a Russian submarine in the Baltic Sea. The submarine entered through the strait and was spotted between Sweden and Denmark. According to preliminary information, it is a Kilo-class multi-purpose diesel-electric submarine, one of the most silent in the world, capable of carrying out both reconnaissance and strike missions. Meanwhile, in NATO, Russia's breakdown in the Mediterranean Sea has already been commented on, and more precisely, mocked.
At this point, there is virtually no Russian naval presence left in the Mediterranean Sea. Only a lonely and broken Russian submarine is limping home after its patrol.
At the same time, the NATO Secretary General referenced the novel The Hunt for Red October, in which a Soviet nuclear submarine hijacked by conspirators is being sought abroad. Roots sarcastically emphasized, and I quote, how things have changed. Now it looks more like a hunt for the nearest mechanic. The world is on the brink of explosion. Swedish military forces encountered a Kremlin submarine in international waters. What is Putin up to? A new provocation could become the spark for World War III. All the shocking details, coming up.
The Swedish Navy detected a Russian submarine in the Baltic Sea. The military reported this on the social network X. According to the agency, the vessel entered the Baltic through the Great Belt Strait and was later spotted in the Kattegat Strait between Sweden and Denmark. Air Force units and fighter jets escorted the submarine. The Swedes called this episode nothing more than a routine mission. The name of the vessel has not been disclosed by the country's navy. It is only known that it is a multi-purpose diesel-electric submarine of the Kilo class, according to NATO classification. The same class includes the submarine Novorossiysk, with which the Russians recently embarrassed themselves before the whole world when it unexpectedly surfaced off the coast of France.
In many respects, this is the best submarine not only in the Russian fleet but in the entire world. Its engine operates more quietly than the sound of the sea outside, which means the vessel can remain undetected on screens of NATO radars.
The submarine itself is so well designed that it's no wonder I call it a black hole. That is, detecting this submarine, I think, will be a major problem for any potential adversary.
This is how, 10 years ago, Russian propaganda spoke about the lead vessel of Russia's modernized submarine project. The Novorossiysk was built specifically for the Russian Black Sea Fleet. The media enthusiastically claimed that the vessel was capable of sinking an entire group of enemy ships. But now, in 2025, it seems it's getting ready to sink itself.
According to VHK GPU, due to damage in the Novorossiysk's fuel system while on combat duty in the Mediterranean Sea, fuel is leaking directly into the bilge. There are no spare parts for repairs or qualified specialists on board the submarine. The crew is unable to fix the malfunction. Because of the serious accident, other problems have started to occur as well. The fuel accumulating in the bilge is an explosive hazard. The source believes that the crew has no choice but to start opening the bilge right in the sea.
In order to, as they say, solve the problem, there's no other option, they will have to pump this water-fuel mixture overboard. Well, basically, yes, of course, if this starts happening with aircraft, and there's no doubt that the submarine is being watched by planes, anti-submarine aviation, the Mediterranean Sea, after all, is quite a densely populated area. With military ships from different countries, it will be easy to spot by the large rainbow-colored slick. In fact, that's exactly what everyone is watching for right now. But it should be carefully noted that a submarine which is approximately 70 meters in length is not truly that big, nor does it represent such a truly huge volume. Although, of course, any form of environmental pollution, regardless of its scale, is absolutely and unequivocally unwelcome.
Now, hundreds of international experts are monitoring to make sure the Russians don't trigger an environmental disaster. The Russian Ministry of Defense is putting on a brave face, saying there's no emergency, that everything is going according to plan. At the same time, they neglect to clarify what exactly the vessel was doing in the Mediterranean Sea since the withdrawal of the last submarine was reported back in January, and whether there are Novorossiysk caliber missiles on board, which the Russian army launches from such submarines. And most importantly, what the command isn't mentioning at all, is there any danger to the crew's lives?
Diesel fumes are explosive, especially considering that a submarine is literally packed with various electrical devices. At any moment, a spark could cause a fire and the loss of both the submarine and its crew. For me, the main question today is, what exactly is the Russian Federation planning to save? Is it planning to save the hardware, or is it planning to save the people? From my personal point of view, in the unfortunate event of such a serious accident, the vast majority of the crew members should have been safely taken off the ship, specifically of the submarine, leaving behind only a minimal essential contingent. Only those sailors who are able to fight for the vessel's survivability. And fighting for survivability primarily means that all compartments of the submarine must be completely sealed, so that there is absolutely no fuel leakage whatsoever throughout the submarine's various compartments and sections.
So far, hardware remains the top priority for officials at the Russian Ministry of Defense. And it's clear that the experience of the nuclear submarine Kursk, where 118 crew members died, has taught them nothing. Novorossiysk did not request assistance and, under the watch of NATO anti-submarine aircraft, is heading to the port of Kronstadt, where it is supposedly expected on October 21st. According to sources close to law enforcement, during its watch, there have been 10 incidents on the submarine. If Novorossiysk makes it to the base, the crew will be lucky, and they will be replaced by another. Whether the Russians will be able to revive the submarine is a big question.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now.
Meanwhile, NATO is monitoring all of Russia's provocations and has issued a final warning. Kaliningrad is in the crosshairs. Sevastopol should prepare. The alliance's attack will be harsh. What should Russians be prepared for? Watch.
Kaliningrad and Sevastopol will be destroyed in the first hours if Russia attacks NATO. Such a statement was made by former commander of the US Army in Europe, Ben Hodges.
If Russia were to attack Poland in 2025, the way it attacked Ukraine, it would be destroyed by NATO air forces and the alliance's ground troops. One can be certain, Kaliningrad would be eliminated in the very first hours. In the first hours, Kaliningrad would be gone. All Russian facilities would be destroyed. Any Russian military facilities in Sevastopol as well.
The general is confident that the alliance's response to an attack now would be immediate and devastating. But in 2014, the alliance missed something important. NATO countries allowed Russia to go unpunished for its aggression.
If we go back to 2014, when the war began, Europe, the US and Canada generally supported Ukraine. But many countries were still too dependent on Russia for oil and gas supplies. People would say, come on, don't exaggerate. Russia is an important country. It has nuclear weapons. And back then, even in 2014, we failed to make it clear that Russian aggression would not go unpunished. Even the Minsk agreements turned out to be a farce. No sanctions changed Russia's behavior. It had no respect for these measures at all.
Moreover, Russia's behavior became even more aggressive. For example, Russian propagandists personally turned Kaliningrad itself into a staging ground for military threats against Europe. One such person was the Russian propagandist and State Duma deputy Yevgeny Popov. This summer, he released a report from the missile ship Burya, in which he made veiled threats against EU countries. He basically said, look, we have Kalibar missiles and they can fly over 2,000 kilometers. Just do the math yourself to see where they can reach.
Considering that we're in the Baltic and the range of the Kaliber missiles is roughly plus or minus 2,500 kilometers, it's easy to calculate the potential strike zone.
It's against this backdrop that Hodges's words about destroying Kaliningrad were made. The first hours after the attack are not surprising at all.
The complete and utter destruction of Russian military bases, specifically those located in Sevastopol, on the Crimean Peninsula, and in Kaliningrad, which was formerly known as Königsberg, in my considered opinion, is a perfectly adequate and entirely justifiable response to any potential or possible threat emanating from the Russian Federation.
Hodges' warning is not a hypothetical assumption. NATO has long been preparing for possible aggression, specifically from Kaliningrad. At the end of September, for example, Poland and Sweden practiced the defense of Gotland Island, a key element of security in the Baltic region, which is located just 300 kilometers from Kaliningrad. These military exercises were intended to send a clear signal of readiness for joint defense in the Baltic Sea. Warnings are being sent by both Russia and the current high-ranking NATO command. The commander of the US Army in Europe and Africa, General Christopher Donahue, also stated that the alliance could wipe out the Kaliningrad region in an extremely short time if necessary. Everything has already been planned.
Back in August, General Donahue said the following about Kaliningrad, that if anything happens, if anyone is thinking about hybrid provocations on the eastern flank, the alliance has operational plans ready that would allow NATO forces in Europe to literally turn Kaliningrad into ashes within a few hours. But of course, Russian propaganda immediately went up the walls. They started saying it was a provocation, that it's a direct threat, and so on. But this statement from an active American general, and not just any general, but one serving in NATO's military command, is a very direct and clear signal to the bunker and the swamps that everyone sees what you are doing and everyone sees what you are preparing for. And don't think that you're the only ones preparing.
But it's worth noting here that the destruction of cities is probably something of an exaggeration. It's doubtful that NATO would go as far as to incinerate cities. Yes, and it's simply difficult to do. But the fact that military targets will be ordered to say goodbye is a fact.
Talking about the destruction of entire cities is probably out of the question, because first of all, the terrain is quite complex, and secondly, you would need not just a few, but dozens of especially powerful bombs, including even tactical nuclear warheads, but precise elimination of docks, definitely of warehouses, of quay walls and the military ships stationed there. This task is quite feasible.
In fact, there will be plenty of targets for Tomahawks to hit. There are especially many military targets on the Baltic Sea coast. Here, aviation, communications, troops, and repair plants are all concentrated. And Russia should really consider the consequences. But is that really the Kremlin style?
And what do you think about the latest events? Share your opinion in the comments, like the video, and stay up to date with the main news. There's more to come.